One of the exciting things about the RSA this year is that we have lots of new fellows who are wanting to get involved. We've got some new board members, and I just wanted to introduce a few people to you. First of all, can I just ask any fellow who's been a fellow for more than 12 months, can you just stand up just briefly and show us who you are? And that is the biggest turnout we've ever had for an AGM, so I think we should all give ourselves a round of applause for that. Thank you. And now, fellows who have become fellows in the last 12 months, I'd like you to stand up and say hello. Tim, that means you, yes. Excellent, well thank you. Thank you for joining the fellowship. You might have noticed Dawn stood up there. She's a new fellow. We've bagged Dawn. And we've also got some new board members, which is terrific, because we have asked for new board members, for new blood over the last few years. And I think the prospect of joining an organisation that needed to have a wide-ranging governance review and review of its constitution wasn't the most appealing prospect. But now we've got through all of that, and we're into events and particularly into projects again now. We're getting a lot of interest and a lot of people coming forward. So we do have 3 new board members in the room. So we have Chris Hartley here. And I always particularly welcome somebody becoming a fellow who's a former CFO and CEO of a business. So that brings all that kind of experience, and a fellow of the Institute of Company Directors. So Chris brings all that experience on the board. And also we have another board member now in Melbourne, adding great experience, Scott Phillips. Great experience and great enthusiasm, and Scott just responds so quickly to all of my emails, and just he's already doing stuff. It's great. And we've also, even more exciting, we have our first board member from Adelaide, Janet O'Hare. Thank you, Janet. And Janet was working at the moment at the Centre for Work and Life at University of South Australia, and was telling me earlier that she's doing a project on age-friendly cities, which sounds really exciting. And we know a lot of our fellows are interested in how to create and sustain age-friendly cities, so that's really good. We also have 2 new fellows here. We have Peter and we have Oliver. Now I'll just tell you the story of Peter and Oliver, and then I'm going to ask them to come up here and give you a 30-second blast, which is a repeat of what I saw them doing. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll ask them to do their talk, and then I'll tell you the story behind that. So we met at TEDx Sydney. We were finalists in the Fast Ideas competition for the best idea worth spreading, and Peter was on first, and then Oliver was on second, and just great ideas, and lots of people at TEDx this year, the biggest TEDx event in the world with 2,500 people in the Opera House. But a lot of people said it was the best session, or it was one of the best sessions, and there was this comment made a few times about, why did all those other people go on for longer than 30 seconds? 30 seconds was enough. So I would like to invite Peter up to repeat his 30-second big idea, and Oliver to then come up and repeat his 30-second big idea, and I'll just stand to the side here and give you the stage microphone here. So off you go. Peter, your 30 seconds starts now.
Thank you very much. My idea is that in this increasingly connected world, nations have found new ways to harm other nations. We need a Geneva Convention for cyber warfare. We need it now, and we need it to protect the innocent or the vulnerable, and we also need it so that we can punish, because that's what actually does happen under law, those who are the perpetrators. The time is now, the time is to act now, and that's my idea.
Thank you, Peter. And I'd now like to invite Oliver up to repeat his 30-second blast.
Instead of a simple rich list, we should have a more thoughtful value creators list. We should not award prestige to people simply because they have lots of money. Instead, we should ask, what is the net value they have contributed to society? We have people like Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who created billions in economic value, but only took home a public servant salary. We should teach our children not only to focus on creating wealth for themselves and their families, but also to create value for everyone. Because if they do, we will hail them as the value rock stars of the future.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you doing that again. And both Peter and Oliver have come down from Sydney, come across from Sydney here today to meet you all and to repeat that. The story behind this is that there were 6 finalists in this year's competition, and when we came off the stage, obviously there's a little bit of nervousness beforehand going out onto the stage. But when we came off the stage, I said to the other finalists, so what are you going to do now? And some of them went, well, what do you mean now? I've just gone up on stage and spoken to a bunch of people and came up with an idea. And I said, no, in terms of implementing those ideas, and a few were not quite sure whether they were up for that. They just thought they'd had a good idea, and good credit to them for having these brilliant ideas, and it was great to have all that diversity on the platform. But Peter and Oliver both immediately responded to that question by saying, yeah, I'm up for this, I want to implement this, I've been thinking about this for some time, this isn't something I've just thought up for a competition, this is something I believe in. I sent them both, I thought they were both fellowship material. That was my heart and my head were telling me we should have these 2 people in the fellowship. I sent them the application forms. They both sent me back their complete application forms within an hour, I think it was. And I think that kind of sealed it, really. So welcome, Peter and Oliver. And please, any fellows in the room or any other fellows you know that can help Peter and Oliver to implement those ideas, please speak afterwards. Now, we spent a lot of time in the last year trying to connect the fellows better. It's always been a problem offline. How do you get to know the fellows? You can come to events like this, our big ideas for breakfast meetings, our evening enlightenment networking functions, events, informal chats, etc. But how do you actually connect? Well, obviously online we get more chance to connect up, and we've tried various things online. We've tried online discussion boards with the New South Wales fellow, where we actually fellows had a discussion about how we can better connect, and a lot of people said that LinkedIn was probably the best forum. So we set up our LinkedIn forum. Antonia gets a chance to be up there in lights. So we started the. I put that up, by the way. It wasn't random, by the way. That was the best idea, I think, or the best use of the board so far, I thought. So we've now got 113 fellows there, and people are talking, people are connecting, people are privately messaging each other. Lots of people have introduced themselves, and this is a great example of how it can work here, where Antonia is saying that she's working on a program and has the Deputy Governor of Illinois coming across to Australia, looking at implementing healthcare and what Australia's doing around public health, especially in rural poor communities. So we need to sort of have a bit of a reception party. We need to look at what we're doing in Australia, what's happening in the UK, in the US, how we can share, how we can learn from each other. So again, this provides a great tool for us to be able to do that. And also we have the global LinkedIn group. So the local LinkedIn group for Australia and New Zealand has 113 fellows on it. The global group has nearly 3,000 now on there of our 27,000 fellowship around the world. And here's an example of how we're using it here. We were talking about the black box. When the Malaysian Airlines plane went down, we were talking about the black box. And it was pointed out to me that it was an RSA fellow who invented the black box, David Bunny Warren, as he was known, who died in July 2010. And he was actually awarded the RSA Sir Lawrence Hartnett Medal in recognition of that great achievement. And I was talking to a few fellows before coming here today who knew David Warren, and one of them said to me, you know what, if David was alive today, you know what he'd be doing? He'd be inventing something to find the black box. And that's the mentality of the RSA fellows. We've got a massive shift taking place within the RSA fellowship at the moment. We're shifting from events to projects. We go in cycles. We often meet up informally. We have our big ideas breakfasts and forums. We come up with ideas. We have events. We get people together from diverse disciplines, and that's the model of the RSA, to get people from a range of different disciplines together, not people in the same sector. When I first got involved with the RSA in 1996, I was doing work in teaching, and I used to meet up with groups of teachers who used to spend all of their time meeting up with other groups of teachers at teaching conferences with other people within the teaching profession to talk about teaching. It wasn't the best way of improving teaching. So it's kind of, our model is to get people together from diverse disciplines and have these big ideas. So we are moving towards projects. We had our planning. So we've had various consultations with the fellowship. We've asked you what your passions are, what you're interested in, what projects you want to work on. We had a planning session in February. We're identifying project champions for each project. We're activating more fellows, etc. That was our agenda from the planning day, where we introduced ourselves, we talked about the process of delivering these big ideas, generating and delivering the big ideas. We talked about the topics. We were getting lots and lots of interest in areas around suicide prevention and mental health, around the National Disability Insurance Scheme, lots of people interested in doing things around young people. But we had to kind of just develop these into more specific projects. So we had discussions about how we do that. And we've got our 3Ps showcasing and funding mechanism, which has helped give seed funding to a number of different projects. We've got the Catalyst funding from London, and all of our connections with RSA in London. We have RSA connectors, video conferences, and link up with fellows around the world. And anybody here can put in a Catalyst application for anything. But if it's related to one of our projects, it will get a big showcase, and potentially it gets quite a lot of money as well. That's our RSA Catalyst. And increasingly, we're getting into crowdfunding. So every single project that gets Catalyst funding now goes onto the crowdfunding site to see if we can just tease out a bit more money. And one of the things I love about crowdfunding is the democratic nature of it. You know, that it's kind of, there it is, there's the idea. That's how you can contribute what you want to give. I mean, what could be better than that? So some don't fly, but some really start to take off. And so there's a separate section on the website now explaining about crowdfunding and keeping a record for each project as to what money's coming in and how much of the desired funding has been achieved. It's like a score on the door. That's our 3Ps. Some of you are familiar with our passion, proposal, progress mechanism. And so this is where we've got to. We've got to this point now where we've really started to shape the project. So we've got a top 10 with an 11th sitting at the bottom there, which is our perennial issue of manufacturing and commerce. We are the RSA. We are the Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce, with our original purpose and our original mission shaped by William Shipley and the original people who met in 1754. We should never forget the manufacturing and commerce aspects of what we do. We have had a special issue of the journal on manufacturing. We do have fellows who regularly come up with ideas to weave this aspect into what we do. But we've got these kind of 10 projects now that are shaping very nicely. And I just wanted to run through them in reverse order and just give you a bit of a flavour for what's going on, so you know what's going on. If you want to get involved, you can get involved. If you want to be a champion of one of these projects, or you want to co-champion a project, or you want to just get involved in some way, just tell us. And these are live projects, in many cases now, live projects up and running, things happening. Number 10, artists not in residence. Several fellows contacted us last year and said, why doesn't RSA have an artist in residence program anymore? Well, maybe it's to do with the fact that the world has changed and there aren't many positions for artists in residence these days. But I was talking at TEDx, I was talking to one of our fellows, Professor Emma Robertson, and she said, she used to be the artist in residence at the Botanic Gardens in Sydney, and she was telling me about the latest, what's going on in that sector. And so an idea came to mind there that we could have an artists not in residence initiative. We could actually build an online community and link together all the artists who are interested in being involved in all of these kinds of initiatives, and we don't need to have a physical meeting place. We can get people to where they need to be at the appropriate point in time. So that's developing nicely. Enterprising Justice. Now, Enterprising Justice is a fully fledged RSA project in the UK through RSA Transitions. Some of you met Rachel O'Brien when she came across to Australia last year. Rachel's also the commissioning editor of the journal, so we managed to pin her down and talk about the journal while she was here. But we did this fantastic event. Now, sometimes we do events, like we did here in Melbourne when Rachel was here, and it's an event. It's just simply an event. It's interesting in its own right. We find out about all these fantastic issues. But sometimes something else happens. And it's just, being in the right place at the right time. And this was the case with Enterprising Justice, because a lot of people love this idea of setting up a prison as a social enterprise, and even more so potentially a self-financing social enterprise, and really tackling the issue of reducing reoffending, and really letting people come out of prison with a chance. And Rachel told us all fantastic stories, terrible stories and fantastic stories. Terrible stories of, even in this day and age, people being punished again, and it not helping, being released out of prison quite regularly on a bank holiday Monday, 500 miles from their family, with no public transport available and all this kind of thing. Why do we continue to punish people? They're punished once they've gone into prison, they've already been punished, so the rehabilitation process should be starting at that point. So it was a really interesting challenge to us, and then she talked about the prison that's being created in East Yorkshire. So we all listened to that, but when we actually looked at the guest list of people who were coming along, we thought, hang on, there's something going on here. We're getting some big hitters signing up for this one. And we contacted Alex, who's from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and said, Alex, do you know what's going on here? And he said, yeah. He said, we're doing a full-scale review of the criminal justice system in New South Wales at the moment. And so with the help of Chris Hartley, sat over there, we actually put a panel together. And we ended up with a panel which had the New South Wales Commissioner of Corrective Services. We had the New South Wales Inspector of Prisons on his first day in the job. We had the State Director from Mission Australia. We had Jane, CEO from Good Beginnings. We had Rachel, obviously, and then we had Kat, who's from the Women in Prison Advocacy Network, who was inside for 10 years and now advocates for women from the outside. So we had this fantastic panel, and also Claire agreed to do some videos for us. So I'll play those videos and hopefully this will work.
Whether you're totally passionate on a humanistic level or actually just a practical thing about how we spend public money, there's a lot of reason to care about what we do with prisons. Human capability. It's not an easy kind of core mission to have, but I think it's a good one. And I think it comes out of the Enlightenment history of the RSA, which is very simply, it is based on individuals, but thinking about what it is that we need to be to create the world that we say we want. Prison's about punishment. Well, it's not. It's about three things. It's about punishment, it's about protecting the public, it's about rehabilitation. In terms of punishment, I give it a tick. We should never underestimate what it is to be taken away from life. On protecting the public, I think it's a question mark, which is in the short term you take someone out of circulation, they're not going to be committing offences. But it's not clear to me that prison does no harm. It's not clear that they return and they're just going to continue. And in some cases, I think they're going to commit further offences, but perhaps they're going to be worse than they were before. And on the third, the rehabilitation question, we're failing. And I don't think that's a failure of the prison system. I think there's a failure, much broader failure, to understand what it is that people need, but also what it is that we need to do. We need to be really clear that when you take someone into prison, that is the punishment. Everything else you do should be about what kind of condition they're going to return into the community, not just for them, for all of us. The seriousness of taking someone's freedom away, the state should have that power. We need lines and you shouldn't cross them and so on. We'll argue about where they might sit, but the state takes that decision. What goes with that is this enormous duty to then do what you can to improve those lives. It's about the greater good, because in the end we should really, really care about the conditions that people are coming out of prison. The British government owns pockets of land right next door to prisons. So our question was, what would happen if you bring the argument about increasing human assets, human capability, and look at these wasted assets that were sitting there, old prison farms, often land, and brought those things together? Could you actually offer a much better chance for someone to go back in to work and citizenship? So what we're doing now is working on a site, a 45-acre site in the UK, which has an old Victorian farm on it, a manor house, 45 acres of beautiful land, and really our job is to answer that question. Can we, as a sustainable social enterprise, turn that into something that gives the guys leaving the prison a better chance? Transition's about rethinking fundamentally the prison around education, skills, work. The transition from saying, well, this is the prison's job, we'll put people in and we'll expect them to come out the other end, to something that's far more social. And second is, when is that transition from punishment to rehabilitation going to take place, and it doesn't happen in the last few weeks of exit. It needs to start the minute they walk in the door. We want to build in indicators like how many employers are working with prisoners, the community's view of what we're doing, how officers respond to what we're doing. Because in the end, if this is going to be a sustainable project, it's not that we think it's a good idea actually, it's going to be that all those people that have to help deliver it buy into it and see the benefits, both to prisoners, but to the institution and the local community.
So just going back to the projects, if we go back to Design Awards next. Now the Student Design Awards, it's actually the 90th anniversary of the RSA Student Design Awards this year. And we've got, there's stuff on the RSA website about the Design Awards, and there's a separate site for the Student Design Awards, which is here. The winners have just been announced on the 23rd of May. And there's a video on here which I'll show you, which is about the awards and with the award winners. And I'll play you the video, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on with the Student Design Awards this year. But they've had a fantastic history, and here's the video.
Student Design Awards exist to inspire students to use design, to apply all the things they've learnt in their 3 years at university in completely different ways, to think about applying design to real-world social situations.
It gives them an opportunity not just to present what's normally associated with design, which is aesthetics. They actually set out to solve a social issue, problem, challenge.
We work quite closely with our industry partners and our sponsors to develop projects that will challenge, but more importantly inspire the students to tackle big social issues, and we want to get them to think differently about their design skills and how they can apply these in new ways, but also their place in the world, and hopefully encourage them to become more active and engaged citizens.
I judged a prize this year about how do you help young people drive more safely? That's a classic kind of question. Young people want cars, we want young people to have jobs, but at the moment young people's behaviour doesn't line up with the aspiration we've got. What might designers do? And we had some great ideas for that, and that's a typical example of a Student Design Award brief.
I think they're looking for how students actually approach the project, but also what are the social aspects that they're bringing in? How are they linking in this notion of the broader society and societal thinking? It's this notion that design is beyond the consumables now, and it's about the place and the spaces that we live in.
We can see what kind of a thinker they are. We ask them other questions about their project that they might not have thought of. We give them feedback on it, and they can show us some of their other work. We're looking for someone who is just a really good all-round good design thinker, and that's what I think is very different about this competition. It's not just about a project.
Winning a Student Design Award is a real inflection point. We've seen it again and again over the years, that it's an opportunity to start a journey. It opens doors.
As well as receiving cash awards and paid industry placements, the winners also get RSA Fellowship, which means that they can tap into our networks and our resources, which includes the RSA House, where they can attend meetings, host meetings, attend events, use the library, and much more.
We're here today at the RSA Students Design Awards because we won in the Changemakers category. Our entry was the Hive. It was a co-design framework aimed at encouraging communities to create a more sustainable society. For me, it was the assurance that I could push forward social design and be acknowledged for doing it.
Don't have a wobble,
definitely enter if you're interested in entering. If your tutor says enter.
My entry is primarily concerned with the circular economy and zero waste systems. I'm from an interior design course, and essentially I guess you could say the design that I created was product based. So it enables you to perhaps go out of your comfort zone, consider things that you wouldn't have considered before. Coming to the RSA, actually, although I hadn't intended for it to go any further than this, it seems like there is actually so many opportunities to actually progress the idea further and actually perhaps develop a product or a business model, so those opportunities are amazing.
I'm Richard Waters, and I won the Good Journey brief last year, and the prize was a placement with Priest and Hughes. And I did that in September till end of November, and they offered me a job at end of November, so I'm quite fortunate to still be working there, and I'm loving it. I'm learning loads. Winning the RSA award is not just the award, that's it. You become a fellow, and what that means is you're connected to not just people within design, but all different networks. There's even, I think, the Catalyst Fund that helps you out if you've got a great idea that you want to take forward. And there's loads of people that can help you out with that.
I think we need human ingenuity ever more to focus on this question of how it is we get people to lead the kinds of lives they need to lead to create a better future. We've got loads of ingenuity in how it is to produce faster cars or better things. There's no shortage of that. But there's still this kind of question at the heart of society, which is how is it we help people to be good citizens? And I think finding ways of going with the flow of human nature, creative ways to encourage people to do things which make the world a better place. I mean, what more interesting question is there?
So that video gives you a really good flavour of what the Student Design Awards is all about. And we've thought here in Australia about how we can apply this here, and it doesn't fit neatly into our academic system here, but we can contribute in a number of ways. We can sponsor individual awards, we can take our projects and have an award around, or a brief around whatever project it is we're doing, to try and find a design thinking solution to whatever it is we're trying to change. And also we can suggest ideas to go into the briefs for the global design competition. And the briefs come out each year, and we look at the briefs, and it's always interesting to see what has happened. These are the briefs for this year. So we had tomorrow's workplace, everyday well-being, etc., etc. I can show you a couple of examples of where we are with these now, and position it with a bit of history. So here's one of the projects around everyday hygiene, health and hygiene. So this is a bunch of students have been looking at developing safe sanitary towels for girls in rural India. And these projects often start with a statistic, and often a frightening statistic that motivates people, mobilises people. 96% of girls in rural India have no access to sanitary products. Every year we get these statistics which are absolutely terrifying, and it gets everybody mobilised into action. This was a fantastic idea, though, that won an award last year for guide dogs. A new design. This thing had not been looked at for years and years and years. A new design for guide dogs, which was easier for the person with the dog, and also more comfortable for the dog, and healthier for the dog, and more airspace around their harness. It's just a new approach to thinking about a situation. And we've also got this year reinventing the toilet. Now, I'm particularly fond of reinventing the toilet, so I just better tell you about the reason why I'm interested in reinventing the toilet. Is that when I saw the design brief, I was staggered by some of the information in there. I was staggered by the statistic from the World Health Organization and the Gates Foundation, which said that 1.5 million people every year around the world die from coming into contact with toilets. Now, again, these statistics make us sit up and think, and how can we address that? But also, they pointed out that the basic design of the toilet had not changed for many, many years. We've advanced as a society, technologically we've advanced in design terms, aesthetic terms, but also in terms of sanitation, in terms of environmental technology, in terms of a whole range of things, yet the basic design of the basic toilet hasn't changed. And so it's time to just completely rethink it. So nothing better than throwing it into a student design competition. And we know we've got these brilliant past winners of the design competition like Jonathan Ive, who designed the iPhone. And so we just throw it at them and see what comes back. And this also has history for the RSA, because some of you might know the story of George Jennings. Do you know the story of George? How many know the story of George Jennings? Yeah, this is a meeting of the RSA fellows in a coffee house back in 1846, 47, and preparing for the Great Exhibition of 1851. And how do we make sure that the Great Exhibition of 1851 is a success in every sense? And most people's response to that was to come up with grand engineering designs. And if you just get a room full of engineers, they'll just stroke each other's egos or compete with each other until they come up with something bigger, and they can put it on display at Crystal Palace. Now, what the fellows did is say, well, let's look at it from different perspectives. And one of the things that somebody said in that meeting was, this is going to be the largest gathering of people outside of a battlefield. How are we going to manage that? Logistically, how are we going to manage that? What are the issues around public health, sanitation, etc.? And after that meeting, George Jennings went away from that meeting and invented the flushing lavatory. Now, I love that story. I just love that story, the thought of somebody going, here's an answer. And he commercialised it and he charged. You know how much he charged for using his toilet? A penny, yeah, which is where we get the phrase spending a penny. And if he hadn't, he wouldn't have died a rich man and been able to do lots of other good around the world. So this is social enterprise. This is not charity. We're not into a charity model, although the RSA is a registered charity in the UK and in the US. But we've been doing social enterprise since 1754. And that's a good example. So this is a great chance to update that history. We've got that reference point. Let's have a modern day look at it. But moving away from that, and back to our list of projects. Transforming education, schools and approaches to learning. I won't say too much about that, except to say that some of the people in the room know that we've had the Opening Minds curriculum, we've had a completely new approach to education, we've taken the RSA Academy model forward, we've had schools that have been in the bottom 10% of performers, and we've made them into the top 10% of performers. So we've got a track record there, and we've got lots of fellows who want to get involved in projects in Australia there. We've got lots of people whose passion is sustainability in all its forms and developing sustainable communities. And nothing better than the Chimneys project. Now, the Chimneys is a sustainable living community up near Port Macquarie in New South Wales. And this is a project that we have supported, we've promoted, we've given some funding to an education centre. Every step of the way, it's been documented, the story of how this was created, and in the education centre, anybody who's a student of sustainability can go and read that story and follow the whole thing and replicate that elsewhere. But there's another story here, and there's always a story, isn't there? The story here is the story of Annie Georgeson and Ian Bailey. And those who came to see Ian do his presentation at Sydney will probably never forget that day. I certainly will never forget that day, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But Ian, who passed away last year very sadly, Ian was diagnosed, 23 years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer and told he had 6 months to live. And he managed to hang around for another 22 years after that. And he dug his heels in and he would not let go until he created this community. And even when he could hardly walk and his nerve endings had gone and he could only walk on sand, he was still getting this project going, and he wasn't going to give in. And he's created this community which is right next door to a conventional housing sub-district and has 50% less carbon emissions, and it's a fantastic project. Anybody who's interested in this, please get in touch with Annie. Annie is still trying to get this over the very final line. It's very, very close. There's a conference in November up there at Port Macquarie where you can go along, and there's the details on the website. 25th, 26th of November. She is that close to getting this final step of this project, so I would urge you to help out there if you can. And making the NDIS a reality. Well, what have we got going on here? Now, the NDIS, National Disability Insurance Scheme, some of our fellows are passionate about the NDIS. Some have been involved in helping to get it off the ground. I was involved in a project to work out how to recruit the workforce, deliver the NDIS, and got to speak at the launch conference last year in Melbourne. Now, we've put ourselves out there. We've gone to lots of disability organisations and said, we're here to help, and we've had no take-up, no offers. It's a hard sector to help. It's a really hard sector to help. Then they need help. Most of them are sitting back, waiting for the pilots to report, and then they're all going to have something done to them, and then they'll all complain that it's all been done to them, probably. That's the way it usually works, I find. But we really need to get out there, offer to help them make this happen. We've got quite a few of our fellows who've got experience in the UK, like myself, of putting the community care system in place in the UK, and we've made it work in the UK. We can make it work in Australia, so we really hope that some will take up our offers of help. The Manifesto for Youth Enterprise. This is a great initiative, which is a fully fledged, fully funded project in the UK with funding from the Royal Bank of Scotland. We've got a lot of fellows here in Australia who want to make this happen in Australia. And Simon Elsley, Chris Martin Murphy, a whole bunch of fellows that said, I want to be involved in this. It's all about helping young people start businesses or set up social enterprises. And we've got lots of help. We've got mentors. We've got all the people with the know-how. We've got all the people from the UK who've been through this many, many times themselves. So if you know of young people who want to set up businesses or social enterprises, please put them in touch, and please come forward yourselves to take these projects forward. Right, we're up to the top 3 now. So, first of all, life at work. I've been doing work in this area for 27 years, so this is my sort of field. But we've got lots of fellows who said they wanted to get involved in projects around life at work. And our Life at Work initiative is a deliberate banner over a whole range of different initiatives, and the life at work deliberately has a dual meaning. Life at work is about, it's a human life at work. People go to work, it's a human life at work. It's a community that happens to be at work, and we should treat people as human beings when they go to work. It's also about being alive at work. It's about being happy, productive, loving the job, wanting to be there, not wanting to leave. And so we've got involved in a whole range of initiatives, and myself and my business partner, David Donnelly, who's also a fellow of the RSA, have been fortunate recently to be involved in an initiative called Heads Up, which has been developed by Beyond Blue and the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance. If anybody in the room is interested in this, if anybody's interested in transforming, and I mean transforming workplace mental health and creating a revolution that is absolutely unstoppable, please go onto the Heads Up site, join, go to the LinkedIn group, join, go to the LinkedIn showcase page, join, get involved. There's some fabulous stuff there. Here's a media release for one of the surveys that I was privileged enough to get involved in amongst business leaders. We surveyed over 500 business leaders in Australia, and thank you to the fellows who helped with this project as well. And there's just some snippets of the results there. 89% of business leaders think Australian businesses need practical support in how to tackle workplace mental health issues. 84% agree the business community needs a campaign to raise awareness of workplace mental health issues, and this is what they're now getting. They're getting an awareness-raising campaign, and they're getting practical support. The business leaders said we need to raise the profile, we need to raise consciousness, and the managers said we need help. We need help in how to do this. How do we have a conversation with an employee who has mental health issues? 45% think mental health is a problem, but it's not a major cost to the business, so we're trying to change that perception. It is a major cost to the business. 43% agree that businesses have more important issues to think about. So where they say we've got to think about the bottom line, we tell them mental health is your bottom line. We cost it out. We show them how it affects their bottom line. 74% think that mental health problems are a major cause of sickness, absence and lost productivity, which it is, and we show them the numbers. And 54% agree they're not well informed about good mental health policies and practices in the workplace. And there's lots of other stats I could give you, but today's not the time to do that. Please get involved in Heads Up and all the other initiatives under the Life at Work banner. And then right at the very top, we have got these 2 projects going on at the moment, which are very exciting. We've got the War for Wellbeing, which is a working title, and people always question why do you use the word war? Anyway, we'll come back to that one. That's how it started, the War for Wellbeing, as a children's story, really. But we've got fellows, Keith Heggett, who's here today. We've got Professor Sue Roffey. We've got Jane, CEO from Good Beginnings, and we've got a whole bunch of people really up for this. And I'd just like to ask Keith, just give us an update of where we are with this project. Just a flavour of what the project is, Keith, please.
So do I get 30 seconds as well? Is that how? I don't know how I ended up actually having to do this, because I think everyone else took a step back, and Jane and Sue aren't here. So I'll give you my take on it. But basically, I'm a school teacher, and we've got 150 kids in Year 7 this year, and of those 150 kids, 37 of them have a mental health issue. I talk to other kinds of kids, other kinds of teachers in other schools and other areas, and that's not unusual. So something that I'm increasingly passionate about is how do we provide young people with the capability and the resilience to deal with these mental health issues. And I think that starts off by providing them with a vocabulary to talk about these issues. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Sue and Jane with developing what at the moment is called the War for Wellbeing, that's undergoing a process, but which will be an education campaign. We're looking at animation. Do you remember the Dumb Ways to Die campaign, which just became incredibly viral? Something similar to that we're developing. We're working with a creative team in a couple of different schools to find out what they think, and we're looking towards by about August, hopefully we will have some visuals and a way forward to show to the rest of the fellowship what we're thinking of with the War for Wellbeing.
Brilliant, thanks Steve. Brilliant. And last but certainly not least, number one on our agenda, big ideas for suicide prevention. I'll just tell you a bit about the process, what's happening, and then we'll finish and we'll get Dawn. And all this relates to stuff that Dawn's going to be talking about, because everything we do is about collective impact or collaboration or whatever language it is that we use. And it's good to have more sort of formal structured processes and thinking around this, but this is what we kind of naturally, instinctively do. Now, big ideas for suicide prevention. Last year, it was the 60th anniversary of the Samaritans in the UK. It was the 50th anniversary of Lifeline in Australia. We had people having meetings, big ideas for breakfast gatherings, dinners. We had meetings in Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide. We had, we had online forums. We had a global conversation. We had discussions in 20 different LinkedIn groups. And interestingly, the group of all the LinkedIn groups that we started the conversation in, the one that actually got the most activity, the most number of comments, the most ideas, the most number of people signing up was the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Not the group that people would have picked at the beginning as being the one that would actually be most interested in this subject matter. So sometimes you just have to have a punt and see what happens and pick up people on the bus along the way. Now we've come up with, and we're still doing this is still live, and we just haven't got time to do all the things that we'd love to do. It's just very frustrating, and there's so many great ideas, but we've probably identified about 9 huge ideas, one of which is digital life-saving, which is this idea of being able to help people using modern-day digital communications. And when we actually started doing this, we were talking to company directors, we were talking to our fellows, we were talking to scientists, we were talking to professors, we started talking to company directors again, like I say, we started talking to people in the mental health sector. I bumped into Sue, or we arranged to meet up with Sue and people at Beyond Blue and anybody who was interested in having this conversation. As I say, we are completely about collaboration, and competition doesn't come into our DNA at all, although it seems to come into lots of other people's DNA, so we're constantly coming up against it. But we got all these people coming onto the forums, and then we started to get data scientists, we started to get behavioural scientists, we started to get data analytics experts, we started to get digital marketers, and these people came with other ideas. They'd never been involved in the mental health sector, they'd never been involved in suicide prevention, but they were interested and intrigued about wrestling with a difficult problem and looking at new solutions. I then spoke to Colin Nictus, who won the award for the best paper last year at the Australian Marketing and Social Research Society conference for predicting people's travel behaviour on airlines by building a predictive model based on one open-ended question and using text analytics in a program called Leximancer. And I was actually fascinated by the way he was doing this, and the way that people in the commercial sector were identifying people in commercial environments, like somebody putting up a post on social media or sending a tweet to say they were hacked off with NAB, and immediately getting a message from Commonwealth Bank saying open an account with us. And all this stuff is going on out there. So we thought, how can we harness all this stuff? And we need to get into the ethical issues, we need to get into the management issues, we need to get into sustainability issues. We don't want to promise anything that can't be delivered, but the technology's there, and this is exciting. And then we got Nick Drew, who we had at our meeting, our event up in Brisbane. Nick's the young guy who predicted 2 years ago the Triple J Hottest 100 by tapping into people's online conversations. He predicted 92 out of the 100 correctly. He got the top 10 right. He got the top 6 in the right order. He frightened the life out of the ABC. Mark Scott said he tried to play it down. He said, well, it's all right. He said, nobody complains that news polls spoiled the election, do they? But they shut their website down this year. They tried to stop Nick doing his stuff, but he still managed to get 85 out of the top 100. He still managed to get the top 3, I think. So, we've got Nick involved in this project. We had a great event up in Brisbane called Young People in Inspiration. We had some inspirational speakers there. You could hear a pin drop in that room. And then Nick and his gang, his data pack gang, were there, and we love young, bright, nerdy people who can help us solve problems. And I'm sure Nick wouldn't mind me calling him a young, bright, nerdy person. So we thought this was a fantastic idea, and the culmination of all this work, even though, as I say, it's still a project that's going on, and there's loads, we keep bumping into people every day who are doing great work out there in different sectors, in different countries, and we're trying to harness it together and join all the dots. But we thought we'd throw this into the Fast Ideas competition at TEDx Sydney, and they thought it was a fantastic idea as well. So what I will do is I will finish on that note, and if this works, I'll show you me up on the stage at TEDx Sydney trying to recruit more nerds. And, as I expected would happen, since that, I've had hundreds of people contacting me. I've had 60 digital communications specialists have contacted me since that event, and a whole bunch of people from a range of sectors, and also Helen Christensen from the Black Dog Institute she was in the audience and contacted me immediately and said, let's talk. So we're just talking to anybody who wants to talk, and then we're going to go beyond talk into action. So there we are. That sort of really is, I mean, that's a lot longer session than we would normally do at this kind of event, but there's so much going on at the moment. It is really hard to encapsulate it all, get it all, but hopefully that brings you up to speed with where we are.